This is Impact with Don Wenner.
Dean, it's a pleasure having you on the show here today.
Hey, Don, good to be here.
So I've had the pleasure of coming on your awesome podcast, and you've been running for quite some time. I think twice now. So I'm excited to turn the tables here and get to dig in a little bit with you, learn a little bit more about your story, and got some questions here. I know our listeners would love to ask somebody with your depth of expertise. So since I not everybody yet knows who you are, despite the great job you do building your name and reputation in your podcast, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background, and certainly your podcast as well.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dean Barber. Obviously, I'm the founder and CEO of a wealth management firm in Kansas City, and we've got some other offices around the country. We manage about $2 billion in assets for about 1,500 families. We're a full-service wealth management firm, which means that we do investing, we do taxes, we do estate planning, and we handle risk management issues as well. And our focus, Don, is working on, specifically what I call the millionaire next door, the people that have saved hard, they've worked hard, they've lived below their means, they're frugal, they've got strong family values, and they're getting to a point in their life where they're nearing retirement or they're in retirement, and they really want to truly enjoy those years. And they're looking for a company that can, sit across the table from them and do the right thing. And so they can go do what they want to do, and they don't have to worry about money or finances. And so while it's a very challenging job, it's something that all of myself and my certified financial planners and CPAs, et cetera, take a lot of pride in. Now, it didn't start out as big as it is, obviously. I got my start in the industry the same day as Jordan Belfort. And if you don't know who Jordan Belfort is, all you got to do is I would encourage you to pick up the book and read the book, The Wolf of Wall Street, because it's so much better than the movie. But October 19th, 1987, I was a ripe old age of 21 years old, just old enough to get my securities licenses. And that was the day that I started. And so from that point forward, I fell in love with the industry. I fell in love with people. I fell in love with what I do. And lo and behold, 9 years later, I left the firm that I started with and started what is now Barber Financial Group.
Awesome. So funny story here. So I almost had a story quite similar to yours. So in the 8th grade, we had a career day, and a financial advisor came in on career day, one of my classmates' dads, and he worked at Waddell Reed. And he told us that financial advisors, and he gave us this little chart that showed it, that financial advisors or wealth managers, make more money than doctors and lawyers and accountants and all the jobs your mom and dad tell you to become. And he described it as, to be successful, you had to be entrepreneurial, you had to be a self-starter, and you had to be good at math. Is kind of how, at least that was my takeaway as an 8th grader to his message. Right. Yeah, and so I determined that day I was going to be a financial advisor. And so I shadowed him and other financial advisors in middle school and high school. At 18, I got all my insurance licenses. I was finishing up, I think at 19, all my securities licenses. But I think now that you say that, I was waiting to be able to officially get certain licenses to possibly 21. But I was out interviewing. I interviewed at Waddell Reed and some other firms. And I thought that's what I was going to do while I was in college, before I stumbled into real estate. But pretty close to being on the other side of this conversation, I guess you could say.
Well, you're the father of your classmate there. He was not wrong, but the success rate in the financial industry is extremely low. I actually got my start at Waddell and Reed as well, and
yep.
A little bit more to the story, Don. I think this is kind of interesting because the day that I was licensed, I had just moved to Kansas City from a small town in western Kansas, and I really didn't know anybody. I'd been here maybe 6 months. And so I turned on my little 10-inch black and white TV in my studio apartment with my card table and my folding chair, and I got my notice that my license was effective, and I called my manager up and I said, "Hey, my license is effective. What do I do now?" And he said, "Kid, I don't have time to talk to you. The market's crashing. Haven't you seen that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got my TV on right now, but what does it mean? What do I do?" He goes, "Just start calling people." I'm like, "Well, who do I call?" he said, "Don't you know anybody?" I said, "You know, I don't know anybody. I've only been in the city for 6 months." And he said, "Just get out the white pages and start calling people." And so funny enough, I actually got out the white pages and started calling people, and I wound up setting 28 appointments that day. And of course, at Waddell and Reed, you don't have an office. Your office is your car, and you meet people in their homes. And so, not knowing the geographical lay of the land, I wound up getting out the map of the city. This was prior to the internet and all of that. And so I start plotting out all of the different locations where I had set meetings with. And I was, I had like 45 minute to an hour drive between meetings that I had set back to back and had no clue. So it was really quite interesting how that all started. But, it didn't take long for me to really figure out there was a much better way to do it than just getting on the phone and calling people. I actually started putting together some lunch and learn programs. Got into companies like AT&T and Lucent Technologies and Sprint, where I was doing lunch and learn programs on how to fund college education. Then I started doing lunch and learn programs on teaching people how to read their 401k statement, how to manage their 401ks, how to understand what it was that they owned with inside their 401ks. And that really led to a great source of people coming to me for advice. And when the big Bell companies had all their buyouts back in the late 90s, I was right there because I had been in those companies doing a lot of the lunch and learns. And that was really how my career got its big kickstart.
That's awesome. A lot of parallels there, but I'll save those for another time. So, you said you have, a couple $1 billion of assets now, 1,500 families. Obviously, you've got, wealth ranges that are probably pretty significant. But you describe these, largely hardworking. It sounds like many first generation kind of wealth creators who you have the ability to serve and help them prepare for retirement or live in retirement. And if you've been doing this long enough now that you've probably experienced firsthand, and certainly I'm sure have seen secondhand as well, families who are individuals who build wealth in their family, to then have that wealth, squandered away by the second generation, if not the third generation. People call it this phenomenon, and they have a different term for it in every country, but it's this shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. That first generation builds well, second generation, spends it, and third generation is back, with no money, poor. I would love to get your take on that. And why do you think this happens so often? Statistically, they say somewhere between 70 to 80% of first generation wealth creators' wealth is lost by the third generation. So why do you think this happens so often that that second and third generations don't continue on the success of first generation wealth creators?
But Don, I'm gonna tell you why by talking about you and by talking about me. All right. So people look at me today as the founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar company that, I have a great lifestyle. I'm now working 3 days a week. I started that when my kids were younger so that I could make sure that I got to spend a lot of time with them. We'd take long vacations in the summertime. I'd always take off whenever they were out of school. But what people didn't see was the years leading up to my ability to do that and all of the sacrifices and the risks that I took in order to get to where I'm at today. And, people will look at me today, especially my younger advisors, and they're just like, man, Dean's got it made. It's easy. Right. And so I think if you compare that, and I'm sure you have people in your organization who think exactly the same thing, man, look at what Don's done. I mean, this is easy. I want to be like Don, and they don't appreciate the hard work and the sacrifice that went into accumulating the wealth that their grandparents or great grandparents had accumulated, and those lessons weren't passed down. And so, it's very difficult to see somebody that's in their 30s or 40s, and they're now or maybe in their 50s at this point in time, and they are that third generation, and they didn't watch the sacrifices that their grandparents did. They didn't watch the fact that they didn't take vacations. They didn't do things. They saved. They were nervous about, always nervous about running out of money. And so they were very, very frugal. And the generations that come after never had to be as frugal. They didn't have to really watch every dollar. They took it for granted that wealth was going to be there. And so the families that do a really good job of training their kids and teaching them, and here's what we went through, and here's what grandma and grandpa went through, and this is why we have what we have, and this is your responsibility, and it's a massive responsibility after that, and it's not something to be squandered. We can see those families, the second and third generation, still be able to have that wealth and then pass it down again. And yet there's ones that don't have the conversations. Just this last year, as a matter of fact, we had a client pass away, and he had two sons that were the beneficiaries of about a $2 million IRA. And in the position where the IRA was, the kids weren't able to get on the internet and make the stock trades that they wanted to make, because obviously we work in the capacity of a fiduciary where we've got discretion, et cetera. And the kids were so impatient to get that money into a position where they could start buying and selling stocks and cryptos and all that. They basically cashed out the entire IRA, thinking that they could take the IRA and then go ahead and roll it back over into their own IRA. And they messed up because that's not part of the tax code. Once the genie's out of the bottle there, or the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't get it back in. So consequently, these two sons caused themselves to lose almost $800,000 between state and federal income taxes on that IRA money. So immediately squandering $800,000 of a $2 million IRA. And I have no idea what's going on after that, because lost track of them, because they're going to be out and be stock trading geniuses and never have to work again.
Love it. So I think that final story, I think my experience has been that's more the minority of situations where it was really bad investment decisions that led to squandering a lot of money. I think that what you hit on first there is what I've seen to be more often the case, which is there was a lack of education and communication from parents or grandparents to their kids and grandkids, and the values and lessons and stories of hard work and efforts to build teach their kids adversity and struggle and so forth didn't exist. It was a communication and an education breakdown. So love to get your take on, what do you guide people to do in terms of, families of wealth? How do you guide them on educating, and what resources do you turn them to? How do you teach them to avoid this crisis through communication and education of their, Gen 2, Gen 3, et cetera?
So because we do estate planning for our clients as well, Don, one of the things that we typically talk about with, we'll call it the patriarch or the matriarch of the family, is we talk to them about these problems of the second and the third generations squandering the money. And so when we structure a trust, we want to structure that trust in such a way where those kids can't have access to the money until certain ages, and then just certain percentage of it. And then we kind of lay out in the trust why that is. If they want to get money at a younger age, there's certain stipulations that have to be met. You got to carry a full-time job. You have to have your college degree. There's certain things. And so then we'll appoint a third-party trustee or an independent trustee to manage that trust. And once we have all that set up, then we have a family meeting, and we bring in the kids and we bring in the grandkids, and we talk to them about what the grandmother and grandfather have put together, or the mother and father have put together, why it's put together the way it is, and let them know that, hey, we're going to be here after your parents or your grandparents are gone. We're going to be here to help continue this and to help ensure that, this wealth is something that you can rely on for the rest of your life and pass down even to like a third or a fourth or a fifth generation, and really how to be responsible with it.
So I was funny you said that. So just yesterday I was having this conversation. I'm in this group called 100X, which is a subset of Halftime Institute. And so I was with a few my members of my forum yesterday, and we were talking about trust. And Lloyd Reeb, who's the co-founder of Halftime Institute, said, his approach with his kids is he has no rules, no restrictions, nothing on the wealth, and actually ends up treating his son and daughter-in-laws exact same as his own kids, and says, hey, often trusts are set up are the opposite of trust, right? You set up a trust because you don't trust your kids or your grandkids to be able to make the right decisions. So you put all these restrictions and controls, and we had a lively, spirited debate of some people who set up, hey, my kids aren't getting any money until they're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, and a lot of restrictions and controls kind of control things from the grave kind of mindset. Where do you land on that, and how do you think about what's best practice versus trying to control the money, and which we all want? I think everybody who sets these trusts up have the same intent, right? Which is, you want to make sure the money becomes an asset, not a liability to your children. How do you think about that, and how do you guide people? And I know it's a complicated question, right? If we did a perfect job raising our kids and they're well balanced and educated, and it's a different situation than if you've got a child struggling with addiction issues or whatnot. So I know it varies a lot, but how do you kind of come to those recommendations of how much controls do you put in place in a trust?
I think the real answer comes down to the individual, because there are some people who will do what the co-founder of your group did there, because let's say I've got kids that are in their 30s or 40s. They went to school, they got great degrees, they've got great careers going on, they're already saving, they're doing well, and those kids are already saying, "Mom and Dad, go spend your money. I don't need it. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I do it on my own." And when you have children or grandchildren that already show that maturity level, they already show that competency of handling money, that they're good savers, that they're going to be set up, for life, regardless of if they inherit any money, and they want to encourage the parents or the grandparents to go ahead and spend and enjoy. Those are the ones where you can let go of the reins. I've seen all too often, though, where the kids might be struggling. Maybe they're not saving. Maybe they, are hopping from job to job, and they, every time they get an opportunity to leave a job, they'll take the money out of the 401k, they'll pay the tax, and then they'll go buy a new car. Those are the ones where we've got to make sure that we put those restrictions on, because they'll definitely blow through the money. So it really comes down to every family dynamic is different, and so you need to shape that trust in such a way that it meets what the family dynamic is. And of course, all the trusts are revocable, which means that they can change the rules in these trusts at any point in time. So, if something happens and somebody matures more or somebody starts to flake out, we can make adjustments to those trusts to make sure that what the ultimate, the person who sets up the trust, the trustee, gets what they want.
Awesome. So, I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and an almost 6-month-old. And so for those like myself with young kids or grandkids, and you want to avoid having adult children or grandchildren who are, not responsible and want to spend every dollar they have and make some of those mistakes you just referenced. You want to raise kids who understand the value of money and how to save and invest, and how to live below their means and so forth. What are your recommendations on what you can do kind of today? What are the ways to start instilling those values and building the skills around financial management in our children and grandchildren?
I think you have open discussions about budgets. You have open discussions about, here's what we have that are things that are necessary in our lives. So we have what's necessary, and then we have what we want. And there's a big difference between those two. And I think that you have discussions about here's what's necessary, and you can give a ballpark, and here's what we're making. And a good practice is that you're going to save, 15 to 20% of everything that you make. Here's why. Here's the way that you do it. You build your cash positions first, so make sure you've got liquidity. So in case you lose a job or there's a disaster of some sort, that you've got plenty of cash on hand. And then you start saving for your, what we would call medium-term goals. So here's some things that Mom and I have done. We set up college funds. We know that that's something that we're going to use way before we retire. That money's more liquid. It's invested a little bit more safe. And then once you get those things in place, then that's when you start investing for the long term, saving for the long term, and teaching them that, easy way to do it, Don, is to show them, and you can find it anywhere on the internet today, just a compound interest calculator that shows if an individual starts out right out of college and they start saving $5,000 a year, even at 7% interest, they're going to have over $1 million in their accounts. And when you add up the total amount that was saved, the kids can go, wow, okay, now I get it. That's cool. And then and then maybe show them the freedom that can afford a person later on in life. So if you've got an example of somebody that's retired, maybe it's a grandparent or something like that, and here's why they were able to do what they did, and because they were responsible, and just have those conversations around the dinner table when they get a little bit older. Have a family meeting once a year, talk about the finances, talk about what's going on. If something were to happen to you, what would their responsibilities be? And just have an open dialogue about it. One of my mentors is in his mid 70s right now, and he was he ran the entire air parade for Desert Storm in the Air Force, and retired after 20 years, came out of the military, wound up becoming CEO of ConAgra. He's got a couple of daughters that are both uber successful, both making a mountain of money, both have a ton of money, but he also amassed a great amount of money as well. And so once a year, he takes his daughters and their significant others on a trip. And part of the things that they do on that trip is they sit down and have a family meeting, and he's got minutes, and here's where we're at. Here's what the trust says again. Here's what the assets are doing. Here's what you guys' responsibility is going to be afterwards. This goes to charity. You're going to manage this way, that way. And just so it's just open dialogue all the time about that. And I've got a great story, Don, about a young lady at the age of 19 whose father passed away. And she was the goddaughter of one of my clients. And so my client called and said, here's the situation. Can you help this young lady? And I said, absolutely, love to help her. Well, her and her father had a super unique relationship where he actively involved her in his decision-making process, and why and how, from the time she was probably 12 or 13 years old. He also purchased an awful lot of real estate, so you can relate to that. And so he had her helping him manage the properties, understand what was involved in, maintaining the properties, etc. And so when he passed away, she was not of an age yet where she could be trustee. So there had to be a corporate trustee come in, but I got to kind of get in the middle of that whole thing and help her out and continue that education. And once she reached age 21, she was actually able to become the trustee of the trust. And she's bright already. She's like, I'm never going to touch this principal. I'll live on interest. I'll live off of, rents from the properties, but we've got these properties that need this fix up, that fix up. If I do this, I can increase rent here or there. And the reason she's able to do that at 21, 22, and I think she's 23 now, was because her dad taught her that it wasn't simple.
Yep. Well said. So I'm going to ask you one more question around sort of investments and finance before we get to some more important topics here. Right now, I mean, we're in the longest and greatest kind of, bull run ever, right? Incredible market and in every which way you look at it. But of course, kind of like always, but certainly right now, there's some specific volatility of interest rates, of what's going on in Ukraine. So as you think about kind of what's going on around us right now, what's your guidance or recommendations to how you, I guess, in general, deal with volatility, and how do you think about the pressures and unknowns that we face today?
So just for our listeners and viewers, that this is March the 3rd, 2022, as you and I are doing this podcast, Don. So in case something happens that's different than what I say, I'm not a predictor. I don't have a crystal ball. What I will say is that the market hates uncertainty, and there is a lot of uncertainty out there right now. There's uncertainty around how far Russia will go into Ukraine, what that's going to turn into. Will he continue on into Europe after Russia takes Ukraine, which it looks like that's kind of a foregone conclusion at this point in time, just because of the size of the military that Russia has versus Ukraine. What's that going to do to energy prices? How's that going to impact inflation? And when you start talking about inflation on top of the inflation that we already have because of higher energy prices, the fear in the market today is really that it will continue to push inflation higher. When we were thinking that inflation was going to start to wane, that could cause the Federal Reserve to overreact, to raise rates too fast, and potentially push the U.S. economy into a recession. And so the volatility that we're seeing in the market right now is really factoring in those things. The markets are scared of a recession. Now, if you strip away all of that uncertainty, what we have from a fundamental standpoint is a super sound fundamental economy. We've got an economy that's clicking on all cylinders. We've got unemployment at very low levels. We've got consumer spending doing extremely well. We've got consumer discretionary spending doing extremely well, and consumer confidence remains high. Corporate profits look great. So from a fundamental perspective, we should have just continued on with where we were in 2021. We should have just kind of continued to see, a gradual rise in markets. Obviously, you're going to have bouts of volatility here and there. Without the Russia-Ukraine thing, I think we could have easily have seen another year in the markets where we get a 10 to 12% rate of return. With that being said, I still think that's possible. I think that typically when you see the conflicts like you have in Russia, Ukraine right now, you get really short bouts of volatility with that uncertainty. Those short bouts of volatility can create some buying opportunities. But that's for investors. That's for long-term investors. People that are looking more short-term, I think they need to be careful. And if you're a short-term thinker right now, I'd probably be a little bit more defensive.
Awesome. Thank you. So to pivot from there, I was reading through your story a bit on your website, and I love where it says, the race starts and ends with family. And you referenced a little earlier how you now work 3 days a week, and love just to hear, we call at DLP living fully is a term we use, and we consider living fully when you're succeeding in all areas of life. We call it the 8 F's: faith, family, friends, freedom, fun, fulfillment, fitness, and finance. And love just see how you think about living fully. And we're driven to make an impact on this happiness crisis and the fact we have the highest level of unhappiness in American history today, despite the great economy we've had for so many years and low unemployment and so forth. So I'd love just to hear your perspective to life and how you've made decisions to put family first, and how you think about it today. And you referenced how hard you worked and how different things were in the beginning days.
Yeah, so I will take and give a lot of credit to the way I live today, to experiences that I've got to witness. And most of those experiences were with clients. And I think the saddest thing that I've ever witnessed is people who literally sacrificed and saved, and for them, their pile of money could never get big enough to give them that satisfaction that they were going to be okay. And they worked longer than they needed to. They didn't take trips. They, sacrificed family time. And at the end of their life, they were sad. They were like, I wish I would have done things different. This money doesn't matter. I wish if I could have gone back and done it different, I would have spent much more time with my family. And witnessing these things allowed me to kind of, I guess I'll call it, shape the way that I look at financial planning for people, because I think that a good financial planner is there to help you live your one best financial life, to truly enjoy the wealth that you've created, as opposed to dying on a mattress stuffed full of money that you could have done something with or helped somebody else out with. Right. And so me kind of coaching my clients, this is the way that you should live. And let me just give you an example, Don. I'll have a conversation with somebody as they're heading into retirement, and we talk about what's important. What are the most important things in your life? And there's never been one time when somebody said to me, Dean, money's the most important thing. But almost every time, in the top 1 or 2 things is being able to spend time with the people that I care about. And so we dig into that conversation. Well, who is it that you care about? What do you want to do? And it's my kids. I want to be able to spend more time with them. It's my grandkids. I want to be able to spend more time with them. And so, are they local? Do they live across the country? Do you have to travel to get there? Let's put that in your budget. Let's make sure that we're planning on these times. And I even encourage people to say, you know what, let's try to put into that retirement plan the ability for you to say to your kids, look, we're taking a family vacation. I'm paying for everything except for your airfare to get there. All you've got to do, we're going to plan these far enough in advance. We'll talk about where we all would like to go as a family, that you can get the time off work. And then all you got to do is get there. And that's it. And everything else is paid for. And I've had so many people say, do I have enough money to do that? Could I do that? And so we build it into their financial plan. And it's been some of the most rewarding things that I've seen people do, and the pictures that they send me and the comments that I get when they're coming back from these trips. And I started witnessing that a number of years ago. And it occurred to me that I don't have to wait until I'm retired to be able to do those types of things. So let me set my priorities around my family and around experiences and around time, because, the kids at the end of the day, they're not going to go, man, dad didn't leave us enough money. They're going to say dad didn't spend enough time with us. We would have much more valued that time, and to have more experiences. And so now, as I'm helping people plan, Don, I say, don't wait until you retire. Let's talk about those experiences and the things that are important, and start doing those things now, as long as they don't cause you to sacrifice too much for the future. So that's really what it's all about to me.
Awesome. I love that. So, when you've accumulated wealth, you have kind of four options what you can do with that wealth. Somebody once told me, right? You can spend it, you can lose it, you can give it to your, family and friends, or you can, give it to charity, right? That's kind of, you can't take it with you, right? Those are kind of your options. So you kind of talked about balancing spending that money today on experiences and enjoying life with your kids now. Obviously, leaving wealth to our kids or our family is a goal of many. Area we didn't talk about at all yet is giving and philanthropy. And love to get your perspective. How do you think about those who are in the position, which my belief as a Christian is we're all in the position to give, and we all should be giving. But when you have wealth and you want to incorporate philanthropy and giving into your goals, how do you think about that? While you're here on earth, as part of your estate plan, what are your recommendations and sort of best practices, or what have you seen work in terms of how to make the most impact or enjoy and do the most good, whatever that means to you and your giving?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways that you can give. You can either give with your time, you can give with your money, or you can give with your talents. So as we have those conversations with people, we call them prioritization exercise. Oftentimes, charitable giving is up there, in the top 5 things that people want to accomplish. And so we really dig in of what does that mean? And, I've got clients, Don, who they want to give, and they'll give their 10% to the church. Or there's some people that they can't afford to give that 10% after they retire. So they decide, we're going to volunteer. We're going to do these different things and help out these different organizations, whatever they are that's near and dear to their heart. And so we do have a lot of conversations about that. The charitable giving comes in a pretty big way when it comes to the estate planning as well. And, we can have conversations, and a lot of times we'll have people will set up a family foundation, and that family foundation can then have that wealth. And then the second generation, the third generation can have the responsibility of managing that foundation, which is designed to give X amount per year to charities. So they can see, so they can pass down that responsibility of, us being, a united country, recognizing that some people have been more fortunate than others, and there are those less fortunate that they need the help of those who've done better. And so we try to take it from a family perspective, and then we try to build it through the generations.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Dean, this has been a pleasure. Can you please let everybody know how can they get a hold of you? How can they get on, download your podcast? And any final words you want to leave us with?
All right, sure. So my podcast is the Guided Retirement Show. You can find it on your favorite podcast app or YouTube. And if you go to the Guided Retirement Show, all you need to do is click subscribe. You'll get notified every time there is a new episode. If you'd like to contact me, you can go to barberfinancialgroup.com. That's barberfinancialgroup.com. And I don't know, Don, can you put a link to that website in the show notes?
Yep. Well, absolutely. We will put your links to your podcast and your website in the show notes and the comments for sure. So Dean, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm sure you'll have some people reaching out to you. And any final words you want to leave us with?
I just want to say it was kind of fun being put in the hot seat where I actually got asked the questions, as opposed to me being the one that's doing the asking. And you did a great job, Don. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Pleasure. This has been Don Wenner on the Impact Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. You can check out our other episodes by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, or check us out online by going to impactwithdon.com. I encourage and challenge you to make an impact.